What was the biggest impetus to buying Twitter?
I was growing increasingly concerned that there was a lack of freedom of speech and freedom of expression. There was a lot of censorship, and a lot of censorship some of it was obvious, a lot of it was hidden.
The average person is terrified.
Effectively, what they're saying is they want the public to be misled and uninformed. I mean, the media is going to give you generally the dramatized Cliff Notes version of reality.
I'll be honest, of all the things you do and all the companies you run, the one thing that does concern me, and I know concerns a lot of people out there, so I do have to bring it up, which is Neuralink.
We put a chip in your brain to control your mind. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Concerns not alleviated.
Yeah, there you go. Jump right in. Step right up. Who wants one?
It's not every day you get to talk to a visionary like Elon Musk. I'm lucky to be able to learn from him on the podcast and off air. When the cameras are off, people feel more comfortable sharing their personal strategies. Millionaires and billionaires invest in assets to counter inflation and crazy market swings. Elon himself has previously talked about the little-known power of physical assets, real, tangible investments that can hold their value during a crisis. But the real story, a group of everyday investors have already seen net returns of 10, 13, and even 32%. And they didn't need millions because they used Masterworks' art investing platform. So far, Masterworks has sold over $45 million worth of luxury art, handing the net proceeds right back to investors like us. Every Masterworks sale so far has delivered a return, and users have already invested over $500 million with them. Offerings can sell out in minutes, but Zuby listeners can skip the waitlist by going to masterworks.com and entering the promo code ZUBY, Z-U-B-Y, in the How Did You Hear About Us box. That's masterworks.com and use the promo code ZUBY. See important disclosures at masterworks.com/CD.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls around the world? I would like to welcome you back to the Real Talk with Zuby podcast. Today's episode, this is a glorious day. This is a magical episode. We have got on a legendary guest. Without further ado, the one and only Elon Musk. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you.
So good to have you on. So good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Good to meet you in person. I've interacted a lot online, but it's nice to be in person.
Absolutely. First things first, man. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I mean, there's got a lot going on, obviously. So I just got in from Starbase, Texas, and we're building the Starship rocket. So getting ready for another launch. Hopefully get to orbit this time. Probably be ready in about 6 to 8 weeks.
That's awesome. That's awesome. First question I have to ask, of course, is just how do you manage this all, man? You do so many things, and just managing a single one of the companies that you do is a gargantuan task. So how do you even manage all this on a day-to-day basis?
I mean, with great difficulty. I mean, I work a lot. And I have to say the last 6 months have been extra difficult because of the Twitter workload. I think things are reasonably stable at Twitter at this point. Obviously, Linda Yaccarino has joined, and I think she'll be a big help. And so I'll still be spending a fair bit of time at Twitter, but it won't be occupying as much time. Now that we're sort of financially more or less stable, it's not like an emergency situation. But we still want to rapidly improve the product, especially on the video side. And there's a lot of great things that are going to come out. Obviously, payments down the road, maybe later this year. And improving the direct message stuff, obviously enabling full encryption and video and voice calls, and just basically solving, if there's something you want to do, you can do it on this sort of X everything app, or you can leave easily and do it somewhere else.
So you brought up X. X is something that you've been having in mind for a long time. Tell me the story.
Years.
Yeah, tell me the story about X.com.
Well, I mean, way back in the day, the idea was for X or X.com to be an all-encompassing financial services company, or thought kind of in like a infinite information theory way to be the most efficient database for the information that is money. The way that money currently works is, from a practical standpoint, it's still mostly run on mainframes. That's still a thing for banks. It's mostly written in COBOL. It's still mostly batch processing. So actually, the financial system is very slow. It's not secure. You've got all these heterogeneous, complex databases. So if you have a real-time homogeneous database that is just like fundamentally more efficient and doesn't have all the expenses of bank buildings all over the place and bank branches and ATMs, which are increasingly kind of redundant, it can operate way more efficiently. And so essentially, if done right, the X would serve people's financial needs to such a degree that over time it would become, I don't know, maybe half of the global financial system.
Wow.
Or some big number.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the number is, but pretty big. So it would be by far the biggest sort of financial institution. But like I said, not really in the way that people are used to thinking about banks. Mm-hmm. Just the most efficient database for the thing that is money. Like I said, like least amount of fraud. Everything's real time. And if it involves money in any way, it can be dealt with seamlessly on one location. And then in addition, you've got the sort of social media element, which is also information. It's people sharing information of various kinds, whether it's text, video, pictures, voice, and so so both money and what we call social media are really information exchange. And I think there's potential there to make a product that is really quite compelling, that combines all these things, simplifies people's lives, is more, cost efficient for the average person. Mm-hmm. So, you don't have a minimum number of fees and whatnot. So, so I think there's just a lot of potential to create some, like the ultimate app or system, website, whatever.
I hear that. And so would the long-term goal be for Twitter to evolve into X over time so it would just be fully integrated?
Yeah. I mean, I said at the time of the acquisition, like I could do this independently and create it from scratch. Or what I thought was acquiring Twitter would probably accelerate progress by 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years.
I hear that. What was the biggest impetus to buying Twitter? What was the thing that made you want to do that?
Well, like I said, there is a sort of, for a long time, I wanted to do sort of the create X core. And so that was one element of it. I also thought that I was growing increasingly concerned that there was a lack of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and that there was a lot of censorship, and a lot of censorship some of it was obvious, a lot of it was hidden. Yeah. And I thought that was really unhealthy for public discourse. So how are people, say, in a democracy supposed to make the right decision if they don't have the right information? Mm-hmm. If they're being misled or important information is being withheld, which obviously was the case, in the infamous, Hunter Biden laptop situation. Everyone knows about that, but there are thousands of other smaller situations like that. Mm-hmm. So effectively, Twitter and frankly Google and YouTube and whatnot, Facebook. They put their thumb on the scale of elections worldwide, and they have done for some time. So, and a lot of times it's so subtle you don't even really notice it. Frankly, Google's might be the most pernicious in that it's very easy for them to just slightly derank a search, so it's on page like 4 or 5, if you're looking for something, and nobody ever goes there. So it's not gone; it's just not on page 1. Yeah. And the old joke used to be that what's the best place to hide a dead body would be the second page of Google search results. Nobody ever goes there. Yeah. So, so I think in order to have a solid bedrock for democracy, and frankly, even if a country's not strictly speaking a democracy, it's still good for the people to know what's going on. Yeah. We have to have at least one platform that you can count on that is maximum truth seeking, and that's what the goal is here with X/Twitter is maximum truth seeking, really allowing all voices to be heard. I mean, unless someone's doing something like just flat out illegal, then they should be allowed to say what they want to say. And free speech is only relevant if we allow people that you don't like to say things you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it loses all meaning. And at least in the U.S., like the First Amendment is pointless. So, and if you don't let people you don't like say things that they don't like, and you censor them, it's only a matter of time before that censorship is turned upon you.
Yeah,
So that was the essential wisdom in the First Amendment, and so you can kind of tell that it's working if you see people that you don't like saying you don't like. That's a good sign, actually.
Yeah. Something I've noticed traveling all around the world, and especially, I mean, recently I've been to all over the U.S. I've, of course, spent time in the UK. I went to Australia recently. And it seems like in all these countries, these Western nations that are supposed to be, so-called liberal democracies, people are supposed to be able to speak freely and so on. The average person is terrified to speak their mind. It seems that the concept of freedom of speech has really been pushed to the side and marginalized. Yeah. It's something that is supposed to be a bedrock of our societies and nations and cultures. But something I found incredibly interesting, for example, when you bought Twitter, was that people were not afraid that they would be censored, but they were afraid that their opposition, especially people more on the right side of the aisle, would not be censored. They were afraid of the freedom of speech aspect. So how did we get there?
I mean, I think that people like that should really look at themselves in the mirror and say, like, what are you actually asking here? You want censorship? You want things to be, you want information to be withheld from the public, even though it's fully legal?
Mm-hmm.
Effectively, what they're saying is they want the public to be misled and uninformed of all sides of the issue. That's obviously morally wrong.
Yeah.
But you have the situation where basically all the social media companies are based in the Bay Area, or I guess if you add Snap, it's LA, but the most influential ones are all in the Bay Area. So they have a very sort of far left position, especially in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't get more far left than San Francisco, Berkeley. It's like,
I was exploring the city today, and I noticed that. I felt that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like there's some pretty rough parts of the city.
Mm-hmm.
People sometimes say, "Oh, you must be exaggerating." I'm like, you can just come to downtown SF on any random day.
Yeah,
it's the same thing, and it's like Mad Max Walking Dead situation.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's like you can't believe it. Now there are certainly still many nice parts of San Francisco, but the fact that the downtown core is basically a dead zone. And frankly, some of the areas where there's just no people at all, I think might be worse than the parts where the zombies are, because it's actually bleaker. It's just empty.
Yeah.
So, we clearly don't want to have a world where that policy is amplified to Earth. Where we don't want all of Earth to be like downtown SF.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see kind of like where the policies lead, and the evidence is right here. So it's one thing if the sort of damage radius of an ideology is limited geographically to sort of 10-mile radius or something like that, which is what say a niche ideology would be limited geographically.
Mm-hmm.
But when you've got some massive global megaphone, it's effectively a mind virus megaphone to Earth. If you have something like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok to some degree, maybe to a large degree. I've heard a lot of people voicing increasing concerns about TikTok, not from the standpoint of spying, but having a negative effect on the youth.
Yeah.
So shorter attention spans, and I don't know.
How do you manage that aspect when it comes to social media? Because I understand that anyone running a major social media corporation, there are so many different points of interest and conflicts and ethical confusion. I think a lot of people think it's sort of easier than it must be, right? You've got, number one, I think people often forget that these platforms are global.
They're global, yeah.
They're not just in the USA. They're not just in one nation. There are 100 plus different countries different jurisdictions with different laws, different rules. There's political elements involved, and so on. You've got the, typical stuff that you're not going to want polluting any type of websites. There's various legal issues. But then also the goal of the platforms is to keep people on them. In most cases is to sell advertising, is to make them sticky and addictive and keep people coming back. But in your mind, where's the line on that between we can recognize some of the problems that social media is having, especially when it comes to younger people.
Right.
But at the same time, you do want people, of course, using the app and enjoying it and spending time on there. So in your mind, where do you think that balance is?
Well, there is actually quite a lot of pressure from advertisers.
Yeah.
I mean, our advertising in North America and Europe is down like 50%. It's actually still roughly even in most Asia, actually. Interestingly enough, but in North America, it's down like over 50%. Europe's down about 40%, I think if we simply towed the line and kept going as it was before, then we would still have a lot of that revenue. So that actually freedom of speech was pretty expensive.
Yeah,
it really is. Cost billions of dollars. It's currently costing freedom of speech is currently costing about $2 billion a year. So this is a lot.
Just on Twitter.
And lost revenue, it's right now, roughly $2 billion a year.
Yeah.
Now, I think that could change over time. Hopefully it will. That over time, the advertisers will realize that actually Twitter is not some sort of hate speech purveyor. In fact, I get more laughs from Twitter than anything else.
Yeah.
Like if you say like laughs per day, I mean, it's more than everything else combined, at least for me. I sometimes see content I disagree with, but I don't find it to be sort of, a festering sort of pile of hate, what's your experience?
I love Twitter. I mean, I've been using Twitter since 2009.
Yeah, so you know it well. I mean, you can tell.
I've seen it through a lot of different iterations, and what I did notice myself is that for the first few years of using Twitter, no one really worried about being banned or silenced, censored, shadow banned, all of that. It wasn't really a thing. It really started to ramp up, I want to say around 2015, maybe due to the US elections, and you started to feel the walls closing in, not just personally, but other people were finding, that person got banned.
Yeah.
Oh, that person. It's, it started out with people more on the fringes, but then it starts closing in and people start getting temporary. I mean, I got temporarily suspended for saying, okay, dude, once. That was my one suspension.
Really?
Yeah, I said, okay, dude, in response to somebody. And it's cool. I made a song and some great merchandise out of it in the end. But I had to delete that tweet. It literally just said, okay, dude.
That's insane. Okay.
And so people were getting banned for all these sort of things. And then now, in the past year, it's opened up again.
Yeah.
And I think people are having more fun now because they know, okay, I can make that edgy joke or I can say this or I can say that.
You don't need to be walking on eggshells.
Exactly.
So it's like walking eggshells is just definitely going to be a buzzkill.
Yeah.
So our general philosophy is to hew close to the law in any given country. We can't do more than that.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, some countries, in fact, most countries, maybe all countries, have more restrictions on speech than the U.S. So we don't have any choice but to, obey the laws of any given country, or they'll simply cut Twitter off. So sometimes people are laboring under the impression that we can mandate what speech is going to be in some other country. And like, we're not the government, So we'll do the best we can, but we can't go, if we just do illegal stuff, they'll arrest our employees, fine us, and then kick us out.
Yeah.
So we'll do the best we can. And I think we're doing, I'm confident at this point, we do the least amount of censorship. We're the most open. We're the only social media company that open sources its recommendation algorithm. Everyone else is still, just a black box. You don't know what's going on in there. And then we're making it better over time. So, we're going to add, indicators. So you can see on your profile page, have you been search banned? Have you been visibility filtered? Is there anything that's affecting your account in a negative way? Like we're going for maximum transparency. And I think that's what really builds trust. Because it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, trust us, but why? Well, if you can see everything we're doing, then you don't need to believe me. You could just literally look at the algorithm. You could just literally, everything's, completely above board. It should be possible for actually independent third party to recreate the recommendations that they see on Twitter using our algorithm. And frankly, we're still finding different layers of code that we didn't know existed. We just literally found one this week, which was it had like a reputation score for any given account, and if that account started trending, it would be deleted from the trending list. Turned out I was one of those accounts. So the system would exclude me from any trends.
That's interesting.
I think it was simply based on how many times an account had been reported.
Okay.
But not like dividing by total follower account or anything. So, if like point.
Oh, so if you just had a big following, then
anyone with big following is basically getting getting trend banned, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Or anyone that says anything remotely controversial or is targeted by, bots or
activists.
Is basically, it's very easy to sort of report spam an account, kind of DDoS an account with fake reports, and then the system would just say, "Oh, this account's gotten lots of reports, so they can't be in trends."
Yeah. Were you expecting such a level of? I mean, of course, you've got massive public support and praise as well. And I know you've been dealing with this, criticism your whole career.
Sure.
But were you expecting, I guess number one is what level of backlash or criticism have you received? I see what I see, but sure. From your perspective, how much has it been in terms of just the amount of stuff coming, whether that's from mainstream media or just from individuals and even other organizations?
Well, I think it was really be hard to avoid the criticism of me. Frankly, it's like it's not like I'm not dying to get press. It's just my name gets a lot of clicks, and it's important to understand that the press is primarily a click maximizing machine, not a truth maximizing machine. And really, it's somewhat of a Darwinian exercise. If you're not a click maximizing machine, well, you don't get the clicks, and then you don't get the revenue, and then the company goes under.
Yeah.
So the entire incentive structure is maximize clicks, not maximize truth. And so that's why you'll have sort of incendiary headlines that are like really way over the top, or because often the truth is boring and complicated, or it's certainly more like a sort of version of the truth that the media will put out will be more salacious. It'll be spicier than reality, and it'll be the Cliff Notes version. But the drama. The media is going to give you generally the dramatized Cliff Notes version of reality. Because if they give you the full thing, it's too complicated and going to bore people. And if they really give it too much balance, it really doesn't have enough controversy to get the click. This is the incentive structure, and so whatever you incent will happen. So anyways, that's the situation with the media, and the legacy media have had to deal with a shrinking advertising pie for a long time because Google and Facebook and whatnot have taken so much of the advertising revenue. So they're happy about that. Well, it's been a struggle for the traditional media.
Yeah.
So that they've been forced to be click maximizing machines or die. So
how do you think that's going to play out over time? I think a lot of people recognize the problem with the sort of clickbait model. Like it's really a broken incentive structure that's leading to increased manipulation, ridiculous headlines. I mean, we see a lot. It's why it can be difficult to see the line between satire and reality now, because it's just gotten so goofy that you can't tell whether something is from the Babylon Bee or the Onion.
Like many times.
Or
it's getting totally crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's been stuff about, fitness being linked to fascism and white supremacy, and bodybuilding is a
fitness, really.
I wasn't aware that that's what I was promoting. But.
I mean, people should obviously be in good shape. It's just a matter of health and feeling good. And I should work out. I don't really work out much, but I agree. I think I agree with the idea of working out, and I agree with the idea of fitness, and it's just obviously a fundamental, healthy way to live. Yeah. I mean, come on.
I'm repping a t-shirt right now. I don't know if you can read that. This is the Get Jacksinated t-shirt.
Okay, cool.
So nice. That's the movement. I'm trying to get everyone in the gym. Get Jacksinated.
Our podcast today is sponsored by The Wellness Company. As you guys know, I'm always looking for the best health and wellness products to give me an edge. But if I eliminate businesses that have gone woke or forced vax mandates on their employees, there are fewer and fewer companies that I feel comfortable supporting. That's where The Wellness Company comes in. The Wellness Company was formed by a team of doctors who lost their jobs for speaking up about mandates and pushing back against lockdowns. They offer live telemedicine and a wide range of custom formulated supplements to help keep you at your best. My favorite Wellness Company product is their Spike Support formula. It's the only product I've seen that contains ingredients researched to block and dissolve COVID spike proteins in the bloodstream. Taking daily Spike Support can bring better mental clarity and increased energy levels. Whether you're vaxxed or unvaxxed, it doesn't discriminate, and neither does the Wellness Company. Get back to that pre-COVID feeling. Go to twc.health/Zuby and use code Zuby, that's ZUBY, to save 15% at checkout. That's twc.health/Zuby and use the code Zuby at checkout.
Something I wanted to ask you is, and this is a big question. But with all the stuff that you do, what motivates you? What's the big driver?
Well, I mean, generally, what I'm trying to do is take the set of actions that maximize the probability that the future will be good for civilization, that we will expand the scope and scale of consciousness, so that we're better able to understand the nature of the universe. So I'd say I have like a philosophy of curiosity that's maybe best articulated by Douglas Adams in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay.
So where, that's where famously has like the Earth's a big computer, comes up with the answer 42, but the really hard part is what question to ask. So I think it's like we want to try to understand more about the nature of the universe, understand like, what does it all mean? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Where does this all end up? What's real? Are there aliens? I mean...
Well, they seem to be confirming some stuff quite recently.
I mean, I have yet to see any actual evidence of aliens. So, and I'm really deep in space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there is some actual evidence of aliens or an actual UFO, I'll be there in a second. I mean, obviously, when it's like, are we talking like bodies here? Or like, is it a UFO? Is it advanced technology? I mean, that would be very, very interesting. Hopefully they're friendly. If they manage to get all the way here from another star system, I mean, their technology is going to be far in excess. I mean, we'll be primitive compared to them, So, but I also think like if there aren't aliens, or that's actually perhaps even a bigger concern, because if there actually aren't aliens in our galaxy or anywhere near us, then effectively this consciousness on planet Earth is the light of consciousness is like it's a tiny candle in a vast darkness, and a fragile candle, and we should just do everything we can to make sure it does not go out.
What do you think is the greatest threat to humanity?
Well, I think digital superintelligence is a real concern.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that digital superintelligence, or artificial general intelligence, as it's called sometimes or mostly, is more likely to be good than bad. But it's just that the probability of a bad outcome is not zero. And I think probably the more we worry about a bad outcome, the less likely it is to occur.
Okay.
So I think we should be, just say like, let's try to steer the AI in a good direction.
What do you think that potentially bad outcome would be? I mean, I've got ideas in my head. I've seen some sci-fi movies.
Sure.
But
I mean, the obviously the extreme case would be it wipes out humanity. That would be. It's not a 0% chance. Hopefully, it's a low chance, but it's not zero. Or it doesn't maybe it doesn't wipe us all out, but it's kind of like the chimps and the gorillas. They're in small sections of Earth, but they're and we don't like. It's not like we're like going and hunting them down or anything, but they're contained in small areas of Earth, and so they don't.
We don't prioritize them.
We don't prioritize them, and I'm not sure that like they're certainly not like expanding.
Yeah,
they got they're. So they that could be also not a great outcome, where it's like it doesn't kill all the humans, just keeps enough around just for the hell of it.
Farm us.
Yeah, or like just to see what happens, like study us, like gorillas in the mist or whatever, just computer would like just study us out of curiosity, potentially. That would still not be a great outcome for humanity,
No.
I mean, I think we want to, like I said, expand the scope and scale of consciousness, both biological and digital, and ultimately go out, become a multi-planet species, become an interstellar species, visit these other star systems, and maybe we do meet aliens, or maybe we visit these various star systems and we see, wow, here's an alien civilization that lasted 10 million years and did incredible things, and then ultimately died out potentially. I mean, I think we could find there's a whole bunch of dead one planet civilizations, never got beyond the home planet. I mean, due to expansion of the sun, Earth arguably may become uninhabitable as soon as 500 million years from now, which is a long time, but Earth's been around for 4.5 billion, so that would only be a 10% increase in the lifespan of Earth. And so, and if you date the civilization from perhaps the first writing, that's about 5,000 years old, and that's 5,500 years old. Those kind of archaic pre-cuneiform in Sumeria. So that's sort of like that's a very short period of time. So say like Earth's been around for 4.5 billion years. Writing is say 5,000 years old. So if you date civilization from the first writing, which is probably a reasonable number, then civilization's only been around for 1/millionth of Earth's existence.
Not long at all.
Not long at all. We're a flash in the pan, basically. So, anyway, so I think we want to do everything we can to obviously make life on Earth great, and make sure Earth is solid, and that civilization is on a sound footing. Keep making Earth better, but then expand to Mars, and ultimately, to the rest of the solar system, and eventually to other star systems. Be a spacefaring civilization, like in the good sci-fi movies and shows. It's like Star Trek and whatnot. Let's go out there and see civilizations we've never. I mean, it'd be pretty cool if we meet aliens, and hopefully they're friendly. And just gain a vastly greater understanding of the universe.
I think it might depend on which humans they meet first, whether or not. I think we need to be quite cautious about who they meet first. Because they might form some quick judgments based on that.
Yeah, I mean, but we at least want to have the opportunity. Right now, we don't really know how to go anywhere close to the speed of light, let alone beyond the speed of light. So it will take us a long time to get to near star systems. I mean, optimistically, with known physics, we could get to the nearest star system in about 40 or 50 years.
Okay.
It would be very difficult to even make it that short. It's a long time to be traveling through deep space. So anyway, I think that's the future that's exciting. And there need to be things that are exciting and inspiring where you wake up in the morning and it's not just about solving one problem or another or some sort of internecine struggle between the humans, but that there are inspiring goals collectively as humanity where we're really excited about that. And I think being a spacefaring civilization is something that I think a lot of people would find very exciting and inspiring. And, even if they don't go themselves, they can just, kind of live vicariously through those that went. I mean, I think, with the Apollo landings, it was, they were literally said for all mankind, and I think everyone was proud to be a human at that point.
Yes.
It's like we actually went to the damn moon.
That's such an important sentence you just said there, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, you just said something there that's actually really important. You said people being proud to be human. And I think actually we increasingly live in a time where a big part of the problem is that that's not the case.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes people view it with a sort of nationalistic lens about people being proud to be American or proud to be British or whatever. And those people recognize that sort of patriotism seems to be declining. But I actually think, as a species as a whole, perhaps we're not feeling as optimistic about our own species as we should be. And I think that there's been a lot of fear, a lot of people living in constant fear, perhaps people feeling like the future is going to be worse than the present and even worse than the past in some ways. And I think that's causing a lot of psychological problems and having real impact on society and culture. Because if you don't think the future is going to be better than the present, then you lose hope.
Totally.
And it's important to have that spirit of adventure.
Yeah, and I think also if people lose hope in the future, or if they have if they're pessimistic about the future, then they're also unlikely to have kids. In which case, you get the civilizational decline.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just have, for most of Earth, demographic collapse. Like the birth rates were crazy low.
Yeah.
So we're certainly, I think, not expanding, and we're really going to contract pretty significantly. I mean, Japan last year had twice as many deaths as births.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So,
I mean, every single Western country has a below replacement birth rate.
Yeah. And just generally the trend is as soon as you get sort of urbanization, frankly, and unfortunately, education urbanization and education reduce birth rate.
Yeah.
So, and that trend will ultimately happen, I think, throughout the world. So, so that's why I'm, encouraging people let's at least maintain our numbers, we don't need to expand in a crazy way, but it's at least maintain our numbers, maybe a little bit of growth.
Mm-hmm.
So
why do you think so many people think the opposite? I mean, you hear a lot of talk about I think the whole overpopulation thing
total rubbish.
I think it's a massive psyop, and
that's not true.
But why do so many otherwise smart people buy into that?
Well, I think to some degree this is a side effect of the environmental movement.
Okay.
So the sort of environmental movement, I think, started off well, where it was saying, look, we need to move to sustainable energy, which is correct in the long term. We do need to move to sustainable energy. It's tautological. If we don't move to sustainable energy, then it's unsustainable and we'll run out and civilization will grind to a halt. So we do need to have sustainable energy over time. There's obviously a concern with climate change. Although, I'm of the opinion that while there is a long-term concern for climate change, there is not really much of a short-term concern. It's a very slow process, and I think we don't need to sort of be stopping people from farming or having cows or whatever. This is crazy. This is and that's like small potatoes from an environmental standpoint. The fundamental thing from an environmental standpoint is if you've got billions of tons of fossil fuels, essentially, carbon in liquid and gaseous form or solid form in the case of coal, that's buried deep underground, and you move it from deep underground into the atmosphere and the oceans, you obviously change the chemistry of the oceans and atmosphere. Mm. And if you keep doing that for a long time, you will eventually change the chemistry enough that there will indeed be climate change. But Earth is very big, and humans are small. I mean, Tim Urban, I calculated that you could fit all the humans on Earth on one floor in the city of New York.
On one floor?
On one floor, yes. Now, it'd be kind of wedged in there, but,
oh, okay. So if you just kind of spread them throughout the city. Okay,
shoulder to shoulder, whatever. Okay. It's a, like basically the cross-sectional area of humans is small. Like we think that there are a lot of people, and that's, if you live in like London or New York, you'll be like, oh wow, there's a lot of people. But that's a very rare situation. Most of the time, if you're flying, across the US or internationally, it's empty. It's empty. Yeah. I mean, you fly from LA to New York, most of the time there's like, you don't see anyone.
No.
Yeah. So, so like if you were trying to drop a ball on somebody's head while flying from LA to New York, you'd have a real hard time. You're going to miss. It's just not we humans are not densely packed. They're, plenty of room for more people. That's basically the situation. So anyway, I think the environmental movement kind of got somewhat overzealous and kind of was, and like in the limit of environmentalism, you start to conclude that humanity is a plague on Earth. That humanity is actually the problem.
That's a big one.
Yeah, and that's like obviously taking the environmental movement just too far. But there are literally people who believe this. They're like extinctionists.
Yes.
New York Times, some months ago, had an article, front page article with some guy who, and his quote was, "There are 8 billion people on Earth, and it would be better if there were none."
That's dark.
Yeah.
That's
I'm like,
dark.
hey, buddy, you can start with yourself.
Yeah.
If you really want to, make a difference. How about, take your own advice here. But that's like a crazy viewpoint, That's like literally saying, let's genocide humanity. I'm like, what? How can you say that with a straight face? That sounds like total madness. But people, like I said, in the limit of environmentalism, it sort of becomes like an ingrown toenail. It's sort of like, yeah, toenail's fine, but not if it's like warped and ingrown. It's just gone too far. Humanity is not a blight on the face of the Earth. And frankly, even with climate change, life on Earth will still continue. The calamities that Earth has suffered where life continued afterwards, like gigantic meteorite impacts, super volcanoes, the continents drifting all over the place. There have been times in Earth's past where it's been like a total snowball or it's been absolutely sweltering hot. And, life, we had many extinction events, but but life continued. We don't see the dinosaurs now, but they've had a good run for 100+ million years. So even if there's catastrophic climate change on Earth, life continues. It just may not be the life as we know it. It may not be humans. It'll be something else. So what we're talking about with climate change is not a threat to all life on Earth, but really maybe a threat to humans and dislocation of humans if there's low-lying countries that, the water level rises and now they're underwater type of thing. So, I think one just needs to strike the right balance by saying, like, look, over time we need to move to a sustainable energy economy, and we can't just keep taking billions of tons of carbon from deep underground and putting it in the atmosphere and expect nothing will happen forever.
Yeah.
But we also don't need to be alarmist about it and super negative and massively disrupt people's lifestyles. I think people can continue to live a normal life.
Yes.
And they shouldn't be guilty about being human or sort of, frankly, having a steak. It's fine.
Yeah. It all, something that strikes me with that agenda as well and people who push it is it also seems like Western countries climbing the ladder and then pulling the ladder up after them. Right. So when you have large developing nations somewhere like India, lots of parts of Africa and so on, and it's like, okay, the Western nations have gone through this whole process to even get to a stage where you can afford to care about such things. You've got other nations that are developing and they're trying to get up to the level of prosperity that, say, the USA has right now. And you want them to care about the environment, but it's like people are still poor. People are not going to care about the environment until they've got their basic needs met.
Sure,
So there's a
sure.
part of it where it's this, it's this sort of belief system that I think is very, what's the right term? It's almost like to use a Rob Henderson term, it's like a luxury belief, right? It's like, okay, it's all good for you to view things that way, but if you think about the average person in many parts of the developing world, they can't afford to be thinking this way. They still need to get up to at least the basic level that our countries are in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I agree with what you just said, but I also think that the cost of sustainable energy has been dropping tremendously, and you're seeing a lot more wind and solar, and pair that with the battery, and you've got continuous power from wind and solar. That's actually very competitive, so cost competitive. Actually, one of the nice things about, say, solar battery is you don't need to run high power lines all over the place. You can have some localized solar battery situation on your house or factory building, or you can kind of decentralize the power generation. And I think that's actually better for people to have decentralized power generation, and also decentralized communications. Like a lot of places, they skipped all the sort of phone landline stuff and went to cell phones.
Yes.
In fact, a lot of places in the world have way better cell connectivity than Silicon Valley, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
So yeah.
When it comes to the idea of underpopulation, what is your biggest concern about that? If there are not, you've said many times publicly that we need more people, we need more human beings.
Yeah.
What would happen if, this is not my perspective, but for the people who are there who do think, who do have this sort of Malthusian worldview, and they think that there's too many people and there aren't enough resources.
Obviously.
He's been wrong for a very long time, but kind of like
still comes back.
Communism, it won't go away.
Exactly. There we go again.
So what's the greatest fear there? If people are not reproducing as they have been for most of human history, what's the greatest concern there?
Well, I think it's like what we risk is a civilizational collapse.
Yeah.
So and somewhat of a depressing civilizational collapse if the birth rate keeps dropping every year and population just keeps going into the sort of like negative death spiral, literally. Then it won't die with a bang. It'll die with a whimper in adult diapers. I mean, that's a bleak end to civilization. So, I keep looking at the birth rate numbers, which are just like available online. It's not like it's basic facts, and hoping that the birth rates will turn around. And every year it gets worse.
Yeah. What do you think could practically be done to help with that? Because a big factor in this is, I talk to a lot of young men and young women. I'm in my own position as well.
Yeah, you should have some kids.
So I plan to. I will.
Yeah.
But due to from everything from social and cultural factors, economic factors, financial factors, a lot of young men and women, say the average 20-year-old or even 25-year-old, they find the whole idea of having children, bringing new life into the world, very scary because they feel like, hey, I don't have the money, I can't afford it, I can't even buy a house, I'm in debt, I'm struggling to keep my head above water, so on. So what do you think could practically be done in USA, Canada, UK, Europe, all these developed countries, South Korea, Japan, all these places where the, population is declining, birth rates are declining? I think it's one thing to recognize the issue, but what do you think can be done on a sort of practical, reasonable level?
Well, I do think that like some of the incentive structure in a lot of countries is against having kids.
Yes.
Like it's sort of it is expensive to have kids, especially if you want to sort of give them the best education and all that sort of stuff. So it's you know, financially difficult.
Mhm.
I mean, but I say that, but then ironically, the higher someone's income,
Fewer kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it doesn't totally make sense that you have an inverse correlation with income and kids.
Mm.
Where so I guess people may sort of think that, but it's not actually real. You know, I think that the fears, there's these unjustified fears of like, well, if I have a kid, things are going to be financially terrible, and it's actually not true. You know, it's just, I don't know that I have a good answer to this because I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I know that for a lot of young people, and some of this is media and cultural programming, but a lot of people have been pushed over the decades the idea that having children ruins your life. Right? That it takes away your freedom and your autonomy, and you can't have fun and do all this cool stuff, and you've got to just, I think the idea of parenthood, I think the solution is, I don't know exactly how to do this, but I think the idea of parenthood and family needs to be made cool.
Yeah, it does.
It needs to be made cool again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people just don't understand, like, nothing will make you happier than having kids. It will absolutely improve your happiness level to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're kind of like programmed for that. You know, it's like, if we just say like in the old days where it's like, people were sort of like food was like short supply, they had plague, like, it's like trying to survive from one year to the next in the old days was like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now we have, now that's kind of more or less normal that you would survive from one year to the next. So, we've become, I guess, complacent, but basically, if it wasn't rewarding instinctively to have kids, we wouldn't have them.
Yes.
I mean, almost none of the world was literate until not that long ago. So it's not like you'd like, oh, let me read a bunch of books. You kind of have to instinctively love having kids. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't read about it. And it's like, it's just don't have any books.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to understand. You will absolutely be happier if you have kids. Absolutely. We're literally, we've evolved to have that, as all creatures have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can take, say, like, I don't know, like an alley cat or something, or a bobcat, like some like wild creature that would normally be quite fierce and unfriendly.
Mm-hmm.
And like kill or eat anything it came across. But the moment it has, cubs or puppies or whatever, or kittens, it becomes that becomes loving mom.
Mm-hmm.
So like the cat that was really mean is like taking care of its little kittens. It's instinct. It's like, it's genetic programming. So people should really expect that if they have kids, they will improve their quality of life, not make it worse.
If you haven't heard already, it's Smooth Sack Summer. That's right, this is the summer to keep your man parts cool while still looking hot with Manscaped. And you can jump right in and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code ZUBI at manscaped.com. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming are making sure we all have a ball this summer by giving us everything we need to stay fresh downstairs. The Manscaped Performance Package 4.0 has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. Their Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents, thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. It's even waterproof, so you can groom yourself in the shower if that's how you roll. The package also includes their Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, Crop Preserver ball deodorant, Manscaped boxers, and the Shed travel bag. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code ZUBI at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code ZUBY, Z-U-B-Y, at manscaped.com. It's Smooth Sack Summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind.
You've got a lot of kids?
Yeah, I'm trying to set a good example.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How has having kids made your life better? How does it make you happier? And how does it motivate and drive the things that you're doing?
Well, I don't know. It's like, I think it's normal to love your kids. It's just, it's just kind of an automatic thing. And they've got this little creature that's depending on you to take care of it. And it's very rewarding to do so, I think, inherently. I mean, they're a lot of fun. But I don't know, you love them, they love you. It's great.
Do you find being a father is a driver? Is that a particular driver and motivator for the way you think and the things the things that you're not trying to do, the things you are doing?
I think it does motivate me to, want to make sure that the future is going to be good for my kids, and sometimes people might say like, well, so sometimes I'm complimented and they'll say like, well, it's very magnanimous of you or altruistic of you to care about civilization. But I think actually, like, even if somebody's very selfish, you should still care about civilization because we cannot live in the absence of civilization. Mm-hmm. You cannot live alone. We cannot, if you want to know what being alone and without civilization is, just look at like Naked and Afraid, It's not, they don't want to, it's not, we all like actually hanging out with other humans. We all actually like each other more than we think. In reality. One of my sons, Saxon, who's sort of autistic, but he's kind of awesome. He's like an oracle of wisdom. He for a long time he was I'd try to have like a family dinner at a restaurant once a week, just go out somewhere. And Saxon for a long time didn't understand why we were doing this. He's like, why are we going out? And then finally he had an epiphany and said, oh, the reason people go to restaurants is to hang out with strangers. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually true. Yeah. Because you can get the same restaurant food delivered. You can call your friends over. Yeah. But you know what you can't get unless you go to a restaurant is hanging out with strangers. So we actually like hanging out with strangers.
Wait until he discovers nightclubs.
Yeah, exactly. Like nightclubs. You go to a nightclub, you're like,
a dark room with loud music.
You can barely see anyone. It's music's loud, but it's still kind of fun. And you're just with a bunch of strangers, basically. Humans actually do love other humans more than they may think they do. And you look at like, say, what's like one of the worst punishments in prison is solitary confinement. Mm-hmm. And it's not like, if you're not in solitary confinement, the rest of the prisoners maybe not like the most awesome group to hang out with, but it's way better than being alone.
Yeah, you're probably safer in there, but
yeah,
you don't want to be there.
So humans love other humans more than they realize.
Yeah. I've listened to a lot of your interviews, and a lot of stuff is about the sort of here and now. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about your journey. People see all the things that you're doing now with Tesla and putting rockets in space and buying Twitter and restoring free speech, trying to make humanity an interplanetary species. But tell me more. I went to South Africa for the first time just a few months ago. So I went to Johannesburg. I went to Cape Town. I know that's where you grew up and you spent your childhood. Mostly
in Johannesburg and Pretoria, and for a couple of years in Durban. Okay, I visited Cape Town a few times, but didn't live there.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit more about the pre-super multiple CEO Elon Musk? Ultra.
I had kind of like I wouldn't say, I really mostly sad and unhappy childhood, actually. It wasn't 100% bad, but it was pretty rough. And I lived in South Africa until I was 17. And then I was able to get Canadian citizenship through my mom because she was born in Canada.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, I left when I was 17. I think my views of South Africa are somewhat scarred by kind of a negative childhood experience, like literally scars.
Yeah.
I have literally quite a few scars. It was tough. So there's certainly plenty of good things about the country, but my particular experience was not that great. So
I hear that.
Yeah.
I know you one of your first projects was a video game called Blastar.
Yeah.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Tell us about Blastar.
Well, I always loved video games when I was a kid and computers. So the video games back then were extremely primitive, you know. So I guess when I was about, I don't know, 10 or so, I saw like the first computer. I mean, I read a lot of books, and then I saw that you could actually have a computer, which is, I thought, wow, this is the best thing ever. It was a Commodore VIC-20. I think it had like 8K of RAM or something. You know?
8K.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It was best. I thought it was the best thing ever. And so I got a book on programming, taught myself how to write computer programs. And then gradually progressed from the Commodore VIC-20 to the Sinclair Spectrum, which was actually a pretty brilliant little computer. That was a 48K computer that felt very advanced after the VIC-20. And then so I was just kind of programming, and you couldn't really get very many games. So I was like, well, I'll program games, play them myself. But it is interesting that this simple game that I wrote when I was a kid, and I think I wrote it when I was like 11 or something. And I did all the graphics and the music and everything. So primitive graphics, primitive music, but still. I was actually, I sold the game for money, which wasn't that much money, but it was a lot for a little kid. And I wrote a bunch of other games too when I was a kid, and then actually I worked briefly at a software company, a games company called Rocket Science in Palo Alto, which had nothing to do with rockets. It was just a games company. And then I don't know. I wrote software for almost 20 years, from like ages roughly 10 to 30.
And I heard you used to play Quake a lot.
Yeah,
and got pretty darn good at that.
Yeah. So, played a lot of Quake, and had one of the best teams in the country, actually. And I think it was the first paid esports thing in the US, or certainly one of the first. And we ended up coming second in that. We were actually coming first, but then the best. I was the second best person on the team. The best person on the team, his computer crashed halfway through the game, so we ended up coming second. But I think like we made a few $1,000s or something. So it was pretty good at Quake back in the day. Yeah.
And I heard you wanted to get into, or at least you thought about getting into programming video games, but then is that fair to say?
I did actually work on some fairly advanced video games at this company, Rocket Science.
Okay.
But that's I like video games, but I wanted to sort of have as big of impact on the world as possible. Like I said, like try to take the set of actions that I think are most likely to result in a good future, be as useful as possible. So I was, for a while there, was pursuing a path of developing technology for electric vehicles. That's what I was going to be doing my graduate studies at Stanford on, is sort of advanced energy storage technology for electric vehicles. And are putting that on hold to start an internet company, because I figured like the technology of electric vehicles would advance and I could come back to it, which I did later. But the internet was which was going supernova at the time. And this is in 95. So I wanted to be part of building the internet, basically.
What was your first impression of the internet? Because I think for young people now, it's like it feels like the internet's always been there.
Yeah.
And I think people forget
the air you breathe or something.
Yeah, I think people forget that. I mean, even within my lifetime, I remember when nobody had email addresses. I remember when people were terrified to put their credit card details online, when people thought selling books online was a dumb idea and this Amazon thing was never going to work. Like that's all within my own lifetime.
Right.
So stuff has changed very, very quickly. But what was your first impression of the internet, and how did you so quickly realize its potential?
Well, as we're talking about, I was into computers from when I was even before I even had a computer. I was reading about them. So, so I had some like very early primitive computers, and then had a computer with a modem. So like dial into like a bulletin board or in these various sort of very early pre-internet things, and then you started to have the internet go beyond just universities and like a handful of universities and government institutions to be kind of commercialized, and it was just growing exponentially. So the way I sort of visualized it was like the humanity was like acquiring a nervous system. So previously, information had to flow from one person to another. So you either had to meet in person, you had to call them on a phone, or somebody had to carry a letter by hand to someone else. And that was the way that information flowed. And if you wanted to have access to a book, you'd have to go to a library. And the book, most of the libraries would only have a very small subset of the books that exist. So your access to information was very limited and very slow. But as soon as you have the internet, where everyone's connected, now you could be in a very remote location, and if you've got access to the internet, you have access to all of humanity's information, everything. You have access to the entire kind of collective group mind. So it's like moving from like where we're communicating almost by osmosis, like just literally direct contact to, and very limited amount of information to now anyone has access to all of the world's information. The internet, you can learn anything on the internet for free. Yeah, all like the MIT lectures are on YouTube. You can become an expert in anything for free if you've got an internet connection.
Yes. And I think people haven't realized that yet.
Yeah, I guess if you ask them, they know it's true, but they don't quite appreciate that the equality of access to information is so radically better today than it was in the past. It's no comparison. For a long time, like books were very rare, and like people would have a small collection of books. Before the Gutenberg press, they'd have to literally copy out the book by hand. So having a book was like a relic.
Yes.
It was like hardly anyone had books, hardly anyone could read, and even those that had books didn't have very many of them. Then you had the Gutenberg press thing, and now you can make copies of books. But still paper, still limited, still not that many. So we should be actually quite excited about the fact that there is this massive leveling of opportunity of access to information, because those that did have books in the old days would be, be like the lord of some, manor or something would have their library, but even that would be a pretty small library. And most people had no books. So now you have access to vastly more information than, the King of England did.
Yes.
Like even 100 years ago, like even say 40 years ago. Like the average person right now has access to more information than the most powerful person on earth did in say 1980 or even 1990, frankly.
I know. I wish it felt like it.
Well, so the thing is that like it's in human nature to that our expectations recalibrate. So, because the difference between almost any part of the world, really, unless it's actively at war, versus like having to survive by yourself or with a small group living off the land, it's like our quality of life basically is so dramatically better than the past, you have to say, well, why aren't we happy? It's because, or sometimes why a lot of people aren't happy is that we just keep recalibrating. We keep setting our expectations higher. We keep moving the goalpost.
Yeah.
So it's, keep moving the goalpost, keep recalibrating, then you just naturally will always be wanting things to be better than in the past. It's kind of like our, as the saying goes, like happiness is reality minus expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But if our expectations keep rising, then reality has to keep rising too. So overall, I think people should be more optimistic about the future, and I think should recognize that our life today is vastly better than it was in times past. That actually violence on average is much lower than it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
War is rare.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, we have war in Ukraine, but it used to be like there would be war everywhere,
yeah. Even just look at the past century.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Well, the last century was insane.
Yeah.
It's now rare for there to be war.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think people lack perspective and gratitude.
Yeah.
With all those things that you're saying, and I think that if people had more awareness of both history and how far and how quickly human beings have advanced and how much things have gotten better, even if you just take something obvious things, poverty, childhood mortality, women dying in childbirth, access to education,
that's a huge issue. I mean, it used to be
literacy.
Yeah.
People were used to just be getting taken out left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
It was very normal for, a quarter or a third of children to die before they reach age 5. It was very normal for young men to be going off to war and being brutalized and killed in all sorts of horrible ways.
Yeah, in fact, Napoleon said every French woman has to have 6 kids. 2 will die two will die as children, 2 will die in war, and then 2 more to continue France.
Wow.
Yeah,
and that's France.
Yeah, and it wasn't that far wrong with all the Napoleonic Wars and stuff.
Yeah, I just think that because of that, I think with a lack of perspective comes a lack of gratitude. And then no matter how comfortable someone's life is, no matter how good things they are, even if they're in good health, no one around them is sick or dying, whatever, and they're still just feeling down and sad. And I think if they could just reframe that in their minds, then I think people would be a lot happier.
Yeah, absolutely. I really encourage people to be students of history.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really good podcasts out there that are very compelling. Podcasts. There's this Explorers podcast that's really interesting, of the early sea voyages, and how everyone was dying of scurvy.
Oh gosh,
because they didn't even know vitamin C was a thing.
Basic stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and then they finally figured out, okay, vitamin C is a thing. So, I mean, if you read history, man, it used to feel like we'd have plagues every year.
Mm-hmm.
A third of the city died.
I mean, they only discovered germs fewer than 150 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. So people didn't even know the idea that you even should wash your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Before delivering a baby or something. That was new.
Yeah, the germ theory of disease was opposed for a long time by the medical establishment. Mm-hmm. It's actually worth noting that literally the official line was germs are fake.
Yes. And the doctors are clean. So
yeah, doctors exactly. If you don't have a good sort of microscope or something, and someone tells you that there's these tiny creatures that you can't see. I mean, it sounds like witchcraft. You know?
Yeah.
It's that there's tiny creatures that you can't see that are on your hands, and if you touch something else, those tiny creatures are going to go in someone else, to basically bacteria and viruses, and they're going to
make them sick.
Make them sick and maybe die. And they're so small you can't see them. Once you get microscopes, people are okay, I see little things wiggling around. I don't know what those things are, but they don't look good. But for a while they were this is preposterous. You're trying to tell me little tiny things that are this small are the real reason we're getting ill, as opposed to bad spirits or something. Because they would they would just think that there was like bad air or something. It's like, this place is cursed, you know?
Too much blood, stick some leeches on.
This place is cursed. That's why we get ill. It's like, or maybe it's got some bacteria.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took a while. They put that for a long time. And we didn't even figure out like antibiotics until last century.
Yes.
So
yeah, because in World War I, I believe
so many
more
people
men
died
of infections than died from actual wounding. Yeah.
I mean, if you're sitting there in a trench covered in mud and blood and you get a scratch, I mean, that scratch is probably end of you, you know?
Yeah. What's the name of that movie? The one that was like all filmed in one take? The World War. Is it
1917 or
1917? I think that's it.
Yeah.
That movie just made me like, gosh, I'm glad that I did not have to deal
World
with that.
War was some next level slaughter.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you ever wonder what the things are? You know how we can look back at something like, you know, the germs, which seems very obvious now. I wonder what the things are that are happening right now that people are getting sick from and dying from, that 100 years from now, people are going to look back and be like, wait, they didn't know that? How did they not know that?
Well, really, the probability of death at this point, I mean, unless someone's engaging in very dangerous activity, is low. So our lifespans, we're really reaching pretty much the end of our natural lifespans. So now if somebody drinks a lot of alcohol, heavy drugs, or smoking is really bad, you know, these things can have a serious impact on lifespan. But if you don't do anything like that, you're probably going to live till 75, 80 years old. You know, we're kind of like our pre-programmed to live around that. Human lifespan's around 80. You know? So that's just what's programmed into us. And then actually, for whatever reason, women are programmed to live slightly longer than men. Mm-hmm. So it could be that you got XY chromosome, and like men don't have the redundancy of a double X chromosome. So if there's an error on either the X or the Y, it's going to, you know, reduce your lifespan. I think actually technically testosterone, also reduces lifespan.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then we also do a lot of really stupid stuff.
We do a lot of stupid stuff, but the statistics are very clear. I think it's everywhere in the world. Women live longer than men, even if you account for war and adventure sports.
And what's really interesting as well is that the probability of a male child being born is slightly higher.
It is 51 to 49.
Yeah. So it's interesting that it actually accounts for that.
Yeah. It's just men are more likely to die at every year of age.
Yeah.
Literally, from a baby to when you're old.
At every stage of life?
I believe it's at literally every stage of life. I didn't know that. Yeah.
That's interesting. Tell me more about, so I'll be honest, of all the things you do and all the companies you run, I think it's all awesome. The one thing that does concern me, and I know concerns a lot of people out there, so I do have to bring it up, which is Neuralink.
Sure.
So firstly, can you explain what Neuralink is and what the goal of it is?
We put a chip in your brain to control your mind. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Concerns not alleviated.
Yeah, there you go. Jump right in. Step right up. Who wants one? No, so Neuralink, you'll be able to see Neuralink coming from a very long distance, because any device that you implant in a human you have to go through so many tests. It moves very slowly. You just do a few people at a time, and then you go to extreme lengths to prove safety. You have to go through the FDA approvals. Like, we're not trying to sidestep any, regulatory approvals. We're doing everything, by the book, and with maximum. We're going far beyond what the requirements are of the FDA from a safety standpoint. Mm-hmm. And the initial devices will really just be pretty basic. It'll be about restoring functionality to people who've lost their connection between their brain and their body. So you can imagine, like, if, say, Stephen Hawking could talk or communicate as fast as somebody with a fully functioning body. Mm-hmm. That would be amazing. So that's like what we're trying to do. That's our first application, is to restore functionality to quadriplegics, tetraplegics, and people who've just, for whatever reason, no longer have a connection between, or a limited connection between their brain and their body. And then the second application would be restoration of eyesight. So if somebody's gone completely blind, maybe even has lost the optic nerve, you can actually still directly stimulate the neurons in the visual part of the cortex. So you can give direct vision to the brain. In fact, you could actually, depending upon what cameras you use, you could actually see in different wavelengths.
Okay.
Wow. Geordie LaForge from you could have that I actually watched an episode of Star Trek Next Generation with special effects compared to what we're used to are not that great, but he's got the wraparound, glasses, and he can see in different wavelengths. So you can see ultraviolet, infrared, and that kind of thing. So you can actually do that. You could say you could see in radar if you want.
And what's the long term goal for it? Because I think myself and others, I think the first part sounds fine. Sounds good.
That's hard to argue with.
Yeah. But long term, I think the concern that people have is this just leading us into this dystopian transhumanist future? Where does it go? What are the ethical boundaries of it?
Well, the thing I wanted to emphasize is that it's not going to sort of pounce on us overnight. You'll see it coming. It's going to be very slow. In fact, I really think that artificial general intelligence or digital superintelligence is likely to arrive before we have really advanced neural links. At least that's where the trend is right now. So, but ultimately, the idea would be to achieve a symbiosis between our biological mind and our kind of digital mind. So we're already kind of a cyborg if you think of your phone and your computers as an extension of yourself. In fact, if you leave your phone behind, it's like you have missing limb syndrome. You're where did it go? So the phone is a kind of an extension of ourselves, like computer is. The various applications that we use are already an extension of self. So we are already a cyborg. It's just that the interface is with our eyes and our fingers.
Yeah.
And that interface, especially output, the rate at which we can type words into a phone or a computer, it's very slow. Our input is much better because with the data rate from vision is, I don't know, many thousands of times, maybe a million times better than the rate at which we can output. So input is maybe, I don't know, roughly a million times better than output. And so what a Neuralink device can do is improve that bandwidth, allow you to be sort of much more symbiotic with the AI extension of yourself. So you can think of like a human brain really could be arguably divided into two parts. One is kind of like the primitive brain, the reptile brain, it's sometimes called. It's like a sort of basic instincts, and then we've got the cortex, like the higher level thinking, planning, and that kind of thing. But the two operate symbiotically. So I haven't yet met anyone who wants to delete their limbic system or delete their cortex. Everyone's quite happy having both.
Yeah,
they're like, I like it the way it is, But your cortex is way smarter than your limbic system. But the irony is that even though the cortex is way smarter than the limbic system, most of what it's doing is trying to make the limbic system happy. It's like limbic system's hungry. Okay, let's get some food. The limbic system is horny. Okay, let's have sex or whatever. We'll see. I mean, the sheer amount of effort the cortexes of all the humans have put into trying to get laid is insane.
It's got to keep the species going.
Yeah, but not even if it's not for procreation. Like the limbic system is really too simple to understand that sex does not result in procreation, because for almost all of human existence that it did. Birth control is a very recent thing. So the limbic system is trying to incent procreation, and but now we can effectively hack the limbic system by doing procreation, by having sex without procreation. So, which is, I guess, maybe part of the issue with, why do we have more kids? Is like in the past, it would just happen because, in order to make your limbic system happy, you'd have sex. You didn't have birth control. So if you'd pop out some kids.
Yes.
So that's how it used to be. So even though you've got a cortex that's way smarter than the limbic system, the cortex is still basically just trying to make the limbic system happy. And then if you think of like the computers as a sort of a third layer, the AI is a third layer. It's not necessarily the case that the AI would be acting contrary to our interests. I think if it's closely linked with our biological intelligence, I think it could actually be just sort of like, again, trying to make the cortex happy, which is trying to make the limbic system happy. So I think we'll put even more computing power into trying to get laid, basically. Now the AI is going to help you get laid.
I think what it is that concerns people about it, number one being new, but I think the main thing is the fact that this is something that's like inside your body, right? I think the idea of putting a chip in, the idea of someone putting a chip in my brain, I just have I have a visceral no, right? Like I have a very visceral reaction.
It's an optional thing. I mean, we're not going to.
Would it be though long term?
I hope so. I think it should be optional.
Yeah,
it'd be bizarre if it was not. No, I think it's
kind of like how. The reason I ask is because smartphones right now are sort of optional, but if you don't have a smartphone, the way everything is sort of designed around society, you can not have a smartphone, but it's a massive hindrance and disadvantage in many ways.
True. A smartphone is almost essential in a modern society to do things.
Yeah. So could a Neuralink end up in that same sort of place?
It's possible, but I'm just saying if it does, it's many decades from now. So it's not like, it's not today's problem.
Yeah.
I'd worry a bit more about digital superintelligence. I'd worry about let's try to avoid World War III.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we're at least having enough kids to sustain our population. Basic stuff like that.
Yeah. What's your greatest concern with artificial intelligence? Because I know that you have worked with it, but also I know it's something that you personally have massive concerns about as well, which you've voiced in this podcast and elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that actually the most likely outcome for artificial intelligence is that it is good, that it will improve our lives, most likely. But there's some chance that it will not, and I think we just need to be cognizant of that and understand that it's a powerful technology, it's a double-edged sword, and we need to put a lot of effort into ensuring that we have a good AI outcome and not a bad one.
Mm. What does a good one look like?
Well, I'd recommend people read the Ian Banks books,
okay.
The culture books. That's the best representation of a positive AI human future that I've seen.
Okay.
So that's my recommendation. I mean, effectively AI. I think it will massively enhance human ability. It's like just a massive amplifier of human ability, just like the computer was. So really, it's just a question of like, does it? There's some risk that it doesn't merely amplify human activity, but it starts basically just being in charge.
Yeah.
And there's some risk it may view humanity negatively and decide that we're a blight on the earth. Like I think like a very dangerous thing would be if the sort of human extinctionist philosophy somehow got into AI, that would be bad. Like that guy that was on the front page of the New York Times saying, the 8 billion people on Earth.
We don't want him coding it.
We don't want him coding it. Yeah. Safe to say. There's quite a few people in this neck of the woods who have that either explicit or implicit extinctionist view.
Yes.
Where they view humanity as a blight on the face of the earth.
Yeah, there's a lot of antinatalists in the world and people who...
And anti-human.
Yes. Like you said, people who don't have the pride in being human, right? There's people who
Yeah,
would
they
even
feel like
say,
guilty or
there's
something.
people who'd even say that that's a speciesism, That's,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a human supremacist. I'll be open about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to fight for Team Human. Like, if we don't fight for it as humans, who will?
Yeah, I mean, if the Earth exists and humans do not, then it's like we're saving the planet for who at that point?
Yeah.
What do you think about AI replacing jobs, though? Because that's a big concern. Even if AI doesn't sort of go rogue and start doing something directly horrible, I think a lot of people's concerns is just, hey, what about everyone's jobs?
AI will certainly be very disruptive because jobs will be different. So no, I think the rate of the change caused by AI is going to be pretty radical. So there will, a lot of jobs that currently exist won't exist in the future. But I think there will be new jobs. And I do think, like in a benign AI scenario, we will really have an age of abundance. I think really goods and services, unless they're artificially made scarce, like it's specialized artwork, or you want that particular house in that neighborhood, like it has to be an artificial scarcity. But anything that is not made artificially scarce will be plentiful, as in a benign AI scenario. You'll be able to have any products and services you want.
Mm-hmm. That
anyone will.
Does that not start to cause a whole new level of problems?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It's like this. It's like there's some things which sound like a blessing, but may in fact be a curse. Yeah. Like I think you will live forever. It sounds like a blessing, and it's actually a curse. You would not want to live forever. You don't know how long forever is. And if you say another potential curse is you can have anything you want effortlessly. Mm-hmm. Are you sure you want that?
Yeah.
Does anything matter at that point?
Yeah. And what about the value? I mean, I think a lot of the value of work isn't just getting money to buy things. It's the meaning, it's the purpose, it's knowing that you worked for this thing, right? It's different. Yeah. It's different to get $10 million because someone just gave you $10 million or you won a lottery versus you created a business and sold products and services that helped you to earn that money.
Exactly. So it's like, how do we find meaning and relevance?
Yeah.
If you have an age of abundance where the computer, you just ask for anything and get it, it is something we'll have to struggle with. That'll be, I don't know. I think that's kind of most likely where we're headed, is an age of abundance. But it will definitely cause some existential angst.
What are you most optimistic about?
In fact, if I should say, for a Neuralink device, I mean, part of what I'm hoping is here in a benign AI scenario, like how do we even go along for the ride? How do we even understand the AI?
Okay.
Like if you've got some sort of, incredible intelligence, unless we do sort of effectively have better symbiosis, increase the bandwidth to the AI extension of ourselves, effectively augment our human intelligence substantially, we may not even be able to appreciate the wonders that will exist in the future. Like, how do you even go along for the ride and appreciate the, potentially amazing things in the future? Yeah.
What keeps you optimistic day to day? You're a busy man. You're running all these companies. You've got a busy family life going on. You've got praise, criticism, love, hate flowing in all different directions. But number one, two questions actually. Number one, how do you stay sane and grounded with it all? Because something that's always...
What makes you think I'm sane?
I think you're certainly grounded. And I think you're grounded. Honestly, I mean, the fact that we're sitting here and that, you interact with so many people. I mean, let's be honest, if 99% of people were in your position, they wouldn't be doing what you're doing on any level. You're there on Twitter, you're cracking jokes, you're posting memes and responding. I mean, if it's you're who you are, but you strike me as a normal guy who's doing extraordinary things rather than someone who's just completely, like, I don't know, out there and I couldn't even have a conversation with, So that's what I mean by sane.
Well, I do think it's important to, not get, quote Scarface, don't get high on your own supply. Of course, in the end, he did. But you don't want to start thinking too highly of yourself because it actually reduces your feedback loop. If you think you're too smart, you stop listening to criticism. So I think Twitter's actually helpful for that. Because certainly people will not shy about voicing their opinions.
The frogs with 20 followers keep you in check.
Yeah, I mean, I've got like there's just some things I'm trying to get accomplished, and advanced rocketry and sustainable energy, and in case of Twitter, freedom of speech. So I think these things mean a lot to me. So I guess I'm motivated to get these things done. In order to get these things done, I have to stay sane because, like physics is the law and everything else is a recommendation. And if you go crazy and you do things that, agree with physics, the rockets blow up, the cars don't work. So physics is a, harsh judge. It's, you get the engineering and the math right, or you don't, and it doesn't work if you don't. So you have to stay grounded in order for the technologies to actually work.
I hear that. Elon, very, very grateful for you taking the time out for this conversation. I want to say, I said this on Twitter, but I want to say it to your face. I massively admire and appreciate what you're doing. A massive thank you from everyone who has been dealing with the nonsense on Twitter, who's
Sure.
managed to get their accounts back and be able to speak freely and all that. I want to say that. But honestly, I think what you're doing is awesome. You're a huge inspiration. I know that in this age of criticism, people don't like to tell people, hey, you're doing a good job. I want to encourage you. I want to uplift you. So I want to do that. And God bless you.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right. It was a pleasure.